So yeah, it's been 5 years since Carly Rae Jepsen released Emotion, her third album, and the album that cemented her place as a cult pop icon. I covered in my previous video how wild it was that she went from the Call Me Maybe girl to what she is now, and this album definitely set her on that path. Emotion is a modern pop masterpiece. One thing that I remember from interviews years ago was that Carly herself had actually recorded an entirely different project intended for this album's spot during her hiatus after Kiss underperformed. Carly Rae herself had actually recorded an entire folk album and then scrapped it. Not too surprising considering that she wrote nearly 300 songs for this project alone and has an entire disco album buried in her backyard somewhere. Carly Rae has gone on record to say that Emotion had to not be about trying to prove something, it had to be about writing something passionate to her. And it showed on the record. This record is essentially pop escapism and a love letter to the desire of finding intimacy with someone. To celebrate this record, I'm going to go through the singles and probably all the tracks. Let's be honest, this album is a masterpiece. Honestly, Interscope and her team's decision to make I Really Like You the first single definitely misrepresented to the general public what this album was going to be like. It signaled to the public that she was still trying to be the Call Me Maybe girl, but ironically enough, I think for unsuspecting pop snobs, this was a Trojan horse. I was a personal fan of Kiss despite it being a rush cash grab. It was sugary, harmless fun, so I was in regardless for whatever Carly Rae was gonna drop, but out of context in the record, it did not properly prepare people for what Emotion was going to be like. Regardless, it is a cute pop nonetheless, but not my favorite track off the record. If I could go back in time and hear the saxophone at the start of Run Away With Me for the first time all over again, I would give myself Alzheimer's to hear it again. This song was it. I almost wish it'd been single one, but we all know the public would sleep on it anyway. Everyone and their mom has given their take on the song at some point in the pop game, but the synergy between the instrumental, the crooning and vulnerable energy of Carly Rae's vocals, the bridge leading to possibly the most bombastic chorus on this entire record, man, Her Mind, it's to this day my favorite song of hers, and it's ruined romance for me forever. The third and final single was Your Type. I mentioned in my old video about her that I theorized that this music video and the song could be a metaphor about her wanting to be a main pop girl, but I don't really think that anymore. What I do think is that this is one of the most devastating songs in her entire discography. The most heartbreaking lyric to me is I'll Make Time For You, because the implication that she's still trying to be a part of this man's life after rejection, it's so realistic and relatable, and I swear all of you have related to this at one point. I think the singles did their job. I do think that this were the most commercial tracks off the record, but they definitely work better in the context of the entire work as a whole. Before I go into the deep cuts, I want everyone to know that she enlisted an insane roster of different producers, and still this record sounds hella cohesive. I don't know how she did that. Emotion, the title track, feels like a musical number because it's really chatty in terms of its chorus, particularly the start, but it goes down smoothly with the synths. I do like this track a lot. I like the energy and the vibes that it gives, but it's definitely a deep cut. Gimme Love was one of those tracks that definitely had to grow on me. I initially wasn't impressed by the repetition of the chorus back when the album dropped, but the song eventually won me over because I started to notice the very nice detailing in the production. Mattman and Robin, who worked on Run Away With Me and Favorite Color, do a great job of creating a very lush environment and an area for Carly Rae to really just do her thing. One thing I really appreciate about the track is the bridge, because it makes the chorus really fly and elevates it to another level at the end. All That, produced by Blood Orange's Dev Hynes, is a slept-on track, guys. It's one of the slower tracks, so I can see why people don't really like it that much, but it is the most 80s song on this entire record to me. Something here that's definitely underappreciated is Carly Rae's lyric work. It is very solid, it is very mature, and the bridge really makes the song for me. I love the atmosphere because it reminds me of the type of music that plays at a Chinese takeout place late in the evening. I don't know, it just gives me vibes. It feels lived in. It feels like there's a memory attached to it. And it's Carly's favorite song off the album, and I can see why, because it's a demonstration of her vocal ability and her maturity. Boy Problems always came to me as one of the most commercial tracks off the record. I'm surprised it wasn't even released as a single, considering that it's one out of 2 tracks co-written by Sia, who's the voice in the opening. What really impresses me here is that Carly is able to make this track her own, despite it being a Sia track. Most people who record Sia cuts end up impersonating her intonation because it's that distinct. Greg Kurstin's pop production remains solid and as sharp as it normally is. I just like the way that the song is about a friend realizing that she's finally pissing off her best friend by talking about her shitty boyfriend issues. It's just a nice switch in perspective here, and it's hella relatable. Like, come on guys, like, you all have that friend with that shitty boyfriend that you just definitely want to tell off. The other track on this album, co-written by Sia, is Making the Most of the Night, and you can definitely hear it this time around in the way that Carly almost imitates Sia's vocal delivery. Sia's demo leaked a while back, and it sort of warped how I felt about the song, which now comes across as a less personal take of Runaway With Me. Haim actually co-wrote this song with her, which is pretty neat to think about. You can actually hear the influences that they have here and there. One lyric that I definitely really do love in this song is Hijack You. It's so quirky in the context of modern vernacular. It's definitely throwbacky. It feels 80s to me. My only downside to this track is that it just doesn't feel like a personal Carly track. It doesn't feel entirely hers, especially once you know who's behind the song. Okay, let's talk about Let's Get Lost, because this one is one of my personal favorites. It is the saxophone for me, the joy that this track gives off, the serotonin that I get from keeping my fingers crossed that maybe you'll take the long way home, to the ooze, to just how tight the instrumentation is. It is wholesome and the energy here is immaculate, and I am so tired of Carly Rae fans sleeping on this classic track. This one would definitely be in my top 3. Fight me, guys. LA Hallucinations is one of the most unique tracks for me on the record, from its lyrics about the corrosive nature of fame and riches to the glitchy sounding instrumental. Carly Rae knows how to really make a song work, but the usage of BuzzFeed buzzers and TMZ crows will date this song in the future. I had to rewind because I haven't heard of BuzzFeed in years. And considering that it came after Let's Get Lost and right before Warm Blood, I mean, like, I kind of forgot about this one, sorry guys. Warm Blood is the next track, and it's produced by Vampire Weekend's Rostam. It is that girl, it is such a funky track, the lyrics are just so odd, you're not quite sure what you're listening to, but it always works. The original lyric was Warm Love, but Rostam misheard it as Warm Blood and loved it, so they went with that. What I really do enjoy about this track is how antithetical it is to 2015 pop trends. The last track off the standard version of Emotion is When I Needed You, which for the longest time was actually my favorite track off the record. It's about someone who you can be with, but only if you compromise yourself, and realizing that that ain't it. I am, to this day, still obsessed with how this track is cut, from the haze to the chorus to the clean simplicity and realism of the track. I feel like Carly's vocals here are just so amazing because she knows how to convey the sense of realization so well through her voice, but god, it is such a bummer of an ending to a record that just opens with Runaway With Me. So I'm definitely going to cover the deluxe tracks as well as the Japanese version, because that's the version I listened to first. Black Heart is the first of 3 deluxe tracks, 5 if you count the Japanese version. Greg Wells produced this track, yes, the one who has worked on 21 Pilot stuff, which explains the more experimental nature of this track. It doesn't seem to go anywhere narratively, relying more on an abstract metaphor set up earlier for love being like a flower. It's not my personal favorite, but I admire how dedicated Carly is to this track. I Didn't Come Here to Dance deserved to be on the standard edition. This track is just bubbly fun about second intentions, oblivious boys who can't see that you're flirting with them. The instrumental break is made of vocal chops and synths that are just too fun to not include. Favorite Color is the final track off the regular standard edition released in Western countries. In my honest opinion, it is the most cohesive ending to this record possible, in that it's a mature ode to her lover. I feel like it dovetails really nicely back into Runaway With Me. The metaphor of colors and blending with someone to become your favorite color is so saccharine yet so powerful. It's definitely the most elegant way to end the album, but there are Japanese tracks and they are really decent solid tracks. A quick briefer, basically CDs are still really popular in Japan, so as an incentive to get people to buy albums there, they include these tracks that are never really released in the Western states until the rights lapse over, or maybe they're Target Edition tracks. The first of the tracks is Never Get to Hold You, which feels like a retread of other songs on the record, but damn does it get me in my feels, and it carries itself so lyrically, so well. It's just about a love that's maybe a little too cold, but worth trying to decode and be with. The other track, which is the definitive closer for anybody who's listened to the Japanese album, Love Again, is a cute little schmaltzy track that continues the themes of Never Get to Hold You, in that it's about a cynical lover and trying to reverse that person's stance. It kind of feels a little too Kiss-like to me. It sounds like a Disney Channel song, but Carly makes it work. Okay, so just a quick little touch on the album's legacy. We've heard all the chatter about this being one of the best pop records of the 2010s era, and honestly it is one of the best pop records of that decade. I think it did a relatively good job of reframing Carly from a washed-up one-hit wonder to a mainstay for underground pop and a darling in the indie pop game. Super hot take here, but I argue that this record does a better job of being 1989 than 1989 does. No shade to Taylor Swift and that immaculate record, but I love Emotion just a hair above that record, and it just does a better job of emulating the 80s and making it work in the modern time period. I still can't believe it's been 5 years since Emotion released, and it's aged like fine wine. I'm gonna give it an eternal 10 out of 10 rating for those of you asking me what I would rate it on a 10 scale. It's an eternal 10 for me. So yeah, what was your favorite track? What was your favorite moment from the era if you went on the tour? Thanks for tuning in. I took a break because I felt burnout in July, but I'll be back to weekly uploads starting this week. Another shout out to my members. See ya!